Hello, I'm Ann Montgomery, Editor-in-Chief of BioProcess International Magazine. I'm here at Biotech Week in Boston speaking with several thought leaders about advancements in bioprocessing and cell therapy development. I hope you enjoy their insights and their visions for the future.
My name is Chris Smalley. I've worked for many years at different pharmaceutical industries, most recently Merck Sharp and Dohme. In the United States, it's referred to Merck and Company Incorporated, retiring from there on July 1st. Since then, I've worked as a consultant to various organizations. Right now, I am affiliated with ValSource, providing consulting services through ValSource, principally to compounding pharmacies because of my background as a pharmacist, as well as being able to relate those compounding pharmacists to regulatory expectations that the FDA and other regulators have in the pharmaceutical industry. So I'll address the elephant in the room by first talking about process contact materials. Many times your process contact materials, are the ones that are going to be examined from a regulatory standpoint, but also from their impact on the process in an aging facility. One I'd like to mention, you might have a process that can't be in contact with metal because the metal ions might interfere with the process. So you use glass or glass-lined tanks. So glass-lined tanks have historically been tested using a spark test to determine whether or not there is in fact a break through the glass lining of the tank through to the metal support. Well, if cleaning the product is a problem, the spark test is going to be a problem because the spark test is not going to be successful. So there are alternate methods to use. Single-use systems are an alternate method. Also, another aspect as a process contact material is gaskets. I have a personal issue with gaskets because many times the mechanics have an inventory of gaskets that they draw against to replace maybe a leak that's observed in the pipe. So they'll take the old gasket out, replace the gasket. Well, what was the material of construction for that particular gasket that they installed? Or was it in fact the right gasket? The inside diameter of a gasket can have significant impact on the pipe. They might put a half-inch ID gasket on a 1-inch pipe, and that's going to significantly impact the flow through that pipe. Alternately, they might not have the right ID that matches the interior of the pipe so that the pipe itself becomes a crevice and becomes a cleaning issue. But moving away from the product contact surfaces, I believe that one of the most crucial to work with when you're dealing with an aging facility is the HVAC system. I believe the HVAC system is originally designed to give you enough air to balance all your rooms properly, but as the system ages, perhaps leaks develop in your ductwork. Many times during value engineering, catwalks and other support structures are removed, and not meaning to damage the systems, but mechanics wind up having to step and walk on HVAC and ductwork, and leaks eventually occur in the system, so you no longer have the same air supply. So have you gone back and looked at your air balancing across your facility? Or in fact, have you gone back and because of other issues that have come up in your facility, added gowning rooms or added doors to rooms, and you've changed your airflow, you've changed the flow of personnel, you've changed the flow of process, and your HVAC system is no longer adequate to your operation. Frankly, upper management needs to be convinced. It's basically a sales package. You have to put a package together saying what the rationale is for those upgrades or for those changes. And if the organization is familiar with quality risk management, if they've embraced quality risk management, the best way to communicate to management is the quality risk management tool. Identifying the risks, certainly, in a good quality risk management process, you have the right people in the room to identify what those risks are, to identify the incidents, the impact of that risk, and the ability to detect that risk. And in a fair risk management process using the right model, you can present that information to management in a fair manner to really indicate to management, do you wish to accept this risk, or is this a risk that you need to tackle now? If you're looking at the proper documentation, documentation shouldn't be impeding the process. Documentation should be facilitating the process. But there is always a chance that your documentation may be inadequate. Many times organizations set a timeline for completing an investigation of a deviation or some sort of failure of the process. Without having adequate time, sometimes the ability to find the true root cause just doesn't occur. I would challenge many organizations to really look at, for instance, if there's a problem with sterility, does the investigation team look at the piping process for the clean in place and sterilize in place process? Those can be very complex piping operations. You've got the piping operation not only for CIP and SIP, but for removal of condensate. Are all the steam traps working? Are all the check valves working properly? Have those systems been checked? There's a tremendous amount of complexity that's been added to a process by adding CIP and SIP. Alternately, you could modernize the process, you can simplify the process by going with single-use systems, which would eliminate the need for an installed clean-in-place and steam-in-place process. So those alternatives can be readily identified, and then certainly you describe whether or not the expense of the single-use system can overcome the capital costs, but lower daily use cost of a CIP or SIP system. A lot of times there's a fear in making a change to say that the change is going to improve quality. Because by saying simply that you're improving quality, you're inferring that perhaps the product that's on the market currently is somehow deficient in quality. And that really shouldn't be evaluated. You don't want to wait till you have a process where you do an investigation and your investigation finds a root cause that in fact does indict the process that's in the market. You want to have a system in place where you're identifying what your risks are and you're mitigating those risks. So if your risk is cross-contamination and you decide to change to a single-use system so that your risk of contamination is minimized, it doesn't mean that the material that you currently have on the market is in fact contaminated. You're improving your process, you're reducing your risk. I believe that the annual product review that's done for products can be mimicked. The same process can be used for process equipment. The ability to sit down and look at a process flow and the equipment that's involved in that process flow and accumulate all the change controls that have been implemented on that process, all the deviations and investigations that have been performed on that process, all the maintenance that's been performed on that process, and sort of an annual process review, if you would like that term, can be reviewed in the process. It's important to review the process simply because we found that annual product review gives us really a good indication of whether or not our process continues to operate under control. An annual process review would do the same thing. It would give us an idea, especially if we have the ability to go back and look at our validation, is our process continuing to operate under the same level of control? We don't go back and look at our validations sometimes for 5 years or more. Certainly sterilization processes like sterilizers and depyrogenation we look at on an annual basis, but many others we stretch out over a much longer period of time. We certainly calibrate on a regular basis, but I feel that just like quality risk management, having the right people in the room, having the mechanics in the room, having the operators that use the equipment in the room, sit down with a facilitator that's trained in an aspect like annual product review or even quality risk management, can evaluate that process, that equipment, and say, this is something that's posing a hazard to our organization. So really, in sum, One of the issues that comes up with aging facilities is, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, is people don't want to shut down a facility to renovate a facility because maybe the facility is running close to capacity right now, and they don't want to have a out of stock situation. And that's, I would say that's a great fear. Also, price has become a very, very important issue in the pharmaceutical industry. There are a lot of products out there where there are price constraints in place, and management doesn't necessarily want to make an investment that's going to result in increasing cost of the product. But ultimately, we've got to make sure we're making the right quality product. If we allow an aging facility to go on, we will have a drug shortage because the facility won't be shut down at a time of our choosing. It'll be shut down at a time when the failure occurs. And if we're not making a quality product, really in the end, are we doing a disservice to the patient?